For decades and decades, conservatives have been disappointed by the Supreme Court's turn from being a fairly apolitical institution that calls balls and strikes and leaves most of the big policy decisions to elected officials to an activist body pressing liberal social goals on the rest of us. Now, reading Miranda rights into the Constitution, that was one thing. But in 1973, everything changed with Roe v. Wade. Justice Harry Blackmun and 6 others used the Due Process Clause of the 14th Amendment to strike down a state law prohibiting abortion, which then took the issue away from all 50 states. And nothing has been the same since. More than any other, that case set the precedent for the court to act as kind of a super legislature to impose a new social order on the American people. But when unelected life-tenured judges ended up taking power away from the people and exercising it themselves, that created a huge fissure in America. Our framers never envisioned that a handful of unaccountable jurists would have such outsized influence. But that's exactly what happened. Now, conservatives have been patiently waiting and patiently working to repair this damage to our constitutional system for as long as I've been alive. They've been trying. So they've marched, they've raised money, and we've all voted for candidates who promise to restore the separation of powers to its rightful place. But often, we've come up short. Too often, justices nominated by Republicans end up evolving to the left. From William Brennan, an Eisenhower nominee, to Warren Burger, one of Nixon's picks, to David Souter of Bush 41 fame, and John Roberts, a Bush 43 appointee. In seminal cases, they abandoned the principle of judicial restraint and joined the activist liberals. Now, one of my earliest memories as a young Reagan administration staffer was watching the Robert Bork hearings. That was back in 1987. What they did to him was vicious political blood sport, and Republicans weren't ready then to fight back. Well, a few years later, he warned about judges becoming social justice warriors.
There are 2 kinds of justice. One, the kind that the judges should be concerned with, is justice under law, which means applying the law fully and fairly. There's a higher justice, which is justice according to morality, and that is really not for judges. That is for our legislators and for ourselves to enact our principles of morality into law, which the judges should then respect and apply.
Well, Democrats savaged him because they didn't like the fact that he was a strict constructionist, while they were motivated solely by their desire to protect their holy grail of abortion. They rejected his nomination, and Anthony Kennedy went to the court instead. Justice Kennedy was a very nice man, but he then spent decades disappointing the voters who put Reagan in office. But conservatives soldiered on within the constitutional framework. And we were told that we had to get control of our own party and then win at the ballot box to effect change at the court. Well, that's what we did. And we did it with Trump's victory in 2016. And now that we have the chance to put a 5th judicial conservative on the court, I no longer count Roberts as one, Democrats are threatening to blow up the entire system, hence the title of the Angle, Riot at the Court. They claim that if they win the Senate, they'll pack the court by adding new justices, expanding it. Something, by the way, that hasn't been threatened and tried since 1937, when FDR tried and failed to mold the court in his favor.
Let this moment radicalize you. If Mitch McConnell is not going to honor RBG's final wish, we will.
The Democrats are saying, well, we'll just pack the court. What would the impact be?
Look, you've essentially cheated and stolen over 2 seats, the Scalia seat and now this one. And I think they'd be well within their rights to do so.
I think additional justices need to be placed on the Supreme Court.
This is just unbelievable. It's outrageous. So Ruth Bader Ginsburg passes away at the age of 87. The Constitution gives the sole right to nominate her replacement to the sitting president, who is Donald J. Trump, period. And if his party has control of the Senate, they have enormous power to move a nominee to a full Senate vote, period. They didn't get these powers by accident. It wasn't a mistake. They got them from the voters who gave President Trump over 300 electoral votes and who gave Republicans 53 senators in the Senate. That's how our system works. But now the left would have us ignore the entire constitutional system because of something the deceased justice supposedly said in her final days?
Her last wishes, when told the voters decide who will be the next president before pushing ahead to fill her seat.
She said, "My most fervent wish is that I will not be replaced by until a new president is installed." We believe that.
Brazenly defying the dying wishes of a woman who spent her life devoted to realizing the full promise of the Constitution.
The full promise of the Constitution is in the Constitution. Imagine if we took that attitude at any of the, 500 occasions when we lost a big case at the court, or when Bork's nomination went south, or maybe after they horribly mistreated Brett Kavanaugh. Imagine if we had reacted like they did. The Democrats would have been screaming bloody hell. Oh, and by the way, since they don't like the fact that the GOP has a 53-47 majority, they're also threatening to pack the Senate. That's something that's never been attempted.
They can abolish the filibuster. They can grant statehood to D.C. and Puerto Rico.
We talk about things like court reform, statehood for D.C., Puerto Rico. None of that happens if the Democrats do not take back the Senate.
What we'll do is very simple. We'll add D.C. and Puerto Rico as states. That's 4 new senators.
Oh, why stop there? Why stop at 4? Come on, keep it going. Oh, by the way, it gets worse. If those threats fail, their surrogates will try old-fashioned physical threats as well.
We need to be out in the streets. We need protests out there every single day.
Now, remember what I said back in January of 2019 about Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez? I think it's a mistake for conservatives not to take her seriously, to brush her off as kind of a flash in the pan or an upstart. She's as close to a thought leader that the Democratic Party has today. This entire unhinged response to the RBG replacement is being driven by the far left of the party, AOC +3 plus whoever else she's going to drag along with her. Biden was basically hiding most of the weekend. The man doesn't even know what to do. Surely the leader of the Senate Democrats isn't appearing with a freshman congresswoman on a matter that the House has zero authority over? Maybe he wouldn't do that, right, Chuck Schumer? Oh, yes, he would.
Would you be in support of potentially renewing talks of an impeachment hearing, either against the Attorney General or the President?
We must consider, again, all of the tools available to our disposal, and that all of these options should be entertained and on the table.
Schumer's embarrassing himself, but so is everyone else in the party. They're so obsessed with beating Trump and his voters that they're willing to destroy our entire system of checks and balances to do so, allowing the radical left to call all the shots. And we predicted it here on The Angle. Poor Biden, he can't get control of these people. He's just an empty vessel to be filled with radical policies by radical politicians who hate our history, hate most of our traditions, and hate most of our people. He's too weak to control the young Bolsheviks. He doesn't have the sharpness to redirect their efforts. And now his entire party is going off the rails. The real choice in this election has nothing to do with Biden. It's a choice between President Trump and the hard left. And this confirmation battle will show us just how crazy the other side is. Republicans are doing what they've promised to do for decades, to put originalists and textualists on the court. We've never proposed packing the court or trying to add new states. Those threats are only coming from one side. The Democrat Party is no longer the party of Clinton or even of Obama, for that matter. It's the abortion party. It's AOC's party. And for that, they're willing to destroy everything we Americans built together over 244 years. One issue. Let that sink in for a moment. And that's The Angle.